The Christmas Letters, Celebrating Advent with Those Who Told the Story First, by Magrey R. DeVega. Chapter 2, Love Incarnate, the Word of Life Revealed. Living truthfully, like Jesus. Some of you may remember the classic game show To Tell the Truth, which debuted in the 1950s and has had updated versions through today. The premise of the show was that a panel of celebrities interrogated three ordinary-looking guests, all of whom claimed to be the same person. At the end of the questioning, the celebrities would each choose which of the three they believed was telling the truth. And then the host, Bud Collier, would say, "Will the real person please stand up?" The show later spawned imitation programs such as What's My Line, I've Got a Secret, and The Moment of Truth. It seems we've always had a fascination with the art of telling a lie. And, to tell you the truth, so does the first epistle of John. John has a fibbing fixation. The word liar is one of his favorite words, and he uses it as many times in his 5 brief chapters as in all the other New Testament books combined. His letter reads like one long polygraph test. In chapter 1, you know you are a liar if you say that you are sinless. Chapter 2, you know you are a liar if you say you believe in God but refuse to keep God's commandments. In chapter 2, you know you are a liar if you deny that Jesus is the Messiah. In chapter 4, you know you are a liar if you say you love God but hate another person. And in chapter 5, you know you are a liar if you say you believe in God but do not believe that Jesus is whom the church says he is. Those are harsh words. No other book in the Bible puts things quite this bluntly, and at the end you almost expect John to say that your pants are on fire. At the very least, we might hear John ask, "Will a real follower of Jesus please stand up?" Well, if you want to know who the real followers of Jesus are, John tells us how to spot them in chapter 2, verses 5 and 6. He says, "But the love of God is truly perfected in whoever keeps his word. This is how we know we are in him. The one who claims to remain in him ought to live in the same way as he lived." In other words, it's not simply about saying whether you are a Christian. It's about following Jesus, living as Jesus lived, and thinking as he thought. Several years ago, the research organization Barna Group conducted an interesting survey among self-professing Christians. They wanted to determine whether Christians acted more like Jesus or more like Pharisees. Their premise was straightforward. They defined following Jesus to mean modeling both his actions and his attitudes. To be more like a Pharisee would mean the same thing, model the actions and the attitudes of the Pharisees. The survey was only 20 questions long, with 5 questions covering each of the following categories. 1. Actions of Jesus. 2. Attitudes of Jesus. 3. Actions of a Pharisee. And 4. Attitudes of a Pharisee. Each question was based on insights from the Gospels themselves. The surveyors asked questions based on the actions and attitudes of Jesus, and the Pharisees recounted in the Gospels. Things like feeling compassion for those who aren't following God, or seeing God working in people's lives even when they aren't following God, attitudes of Jesus, or pointing out those who don't have the right doctrine or theology, actions of a Pharisee. The questions were hard to answer, honestly. Yet in the spirit of 1 John, it's important that we face our inner lives honestly, that we tell the truth about ourselves even if it means confronting some hard realities. Barna shared the results of their survey, and it turns out that a majority of Christians actually live more like Pharisees than Jesus. 51% of people who say they follow Jesus are actually more self-righteous in their actions and attitudes. And what percentage of people are truly more like Jesus in their minds and behaviors? 14%. Only 1 in 7. Wow. Again, 1 John chapter 2 verse 4 puts it this way. The one who claims, I know him, while not keeping his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in this person. Are you more Christ-like in attitudes, but not actions? More like Christ-like in action, but not in your attitude toward others? Or are you both? Or are you neither? I don't know about you, but my own reflections on these questions show that I have a long way to go in going 10 for 10 on the Jesus questions, and 0 for 10 on the Pharisee questions. I suspect that's true for you too. There is comfort in knowing that you and I aren't alone. It's not only a problem for Christians today, it has been this way since the first century. It's why John wrote his whole letter to begin with. But the stakes are high. Survey results like these underscore why many people outside the church view Christians the way they do. Too many unchurched or formerly church people have long thought that Christians are less like the Jesus they claim to follow, in actions and in attitudes. May we each live in a way that is much less like the 51% in the Barna survey, and more like the 14%. More like Jesus, less like the Pharisees. In the 1950s, there was a man named Clinton H. Goodwin, who lived in Los Angeles. At the age of 20, Goodwin descended into a life of crime. He burglarized several stores and gas stations, was involved in a gunfight, and was eventually arrested, tried, and sentenced to San Quentin prison. He had made a mess of his life. While in prison, he was introduced to Jesus Christ by one of the chaplains. He turned his life over to Christ, and when he was released, he determined to devote his life to following Jesus, both in action and in attitude. He became the superintendent of the Union Rescue Mission, the largest relief and support organization in Los Angeles that served thousands of unhoused persons throughout the city. In 1958, he appeared on that very television game show, To Tell the Truth. Along with him was a retired Army officer and a public relations attorney. But there was only one Clinton Goodwin, only one former burglar turned minister, the only one of the three who was telling the truth. Among the celebrity questionnaires was a young, fresh celebrity named Betty White and a young newsman named Mike Wallace. Neither of them guessed who the real Clinton Goodwin was. But 2 of the panelists did. They guessed it right, and they said it was because there was something different about the real Clinton Goodwin. One of them said there was a sort of kindness and gentleness about him that made them believe that he not only did the right things, but he had the right attitude too. How about you? If you were in a lineup of people who all claimed to be followers of Jesus, would people know that it was you? And would you be telling the truth? 1 John chapter 2 verse 6 says, "The one who claims to remain in him ought to live in the same way as he lived." Would people say you were more like a Jesus follower or a Pharisee? Most important, what would happen if Jesus were to say, "Would the real follower of mine please stand up?" And would you be telling the truth?